Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of May 4th. And, one of the things I like to do on this show is to make contact with people I've known over the years and see what they're doing and talk a little bit about what they've done. And maybe that's what old guys do. But way back in the day when we had the Heartland Cafe, I commissioned some neon sign work from this fellow, Jacob Fishman. And he did a really beautiful neon off a kind of a little sketch I did of an arrow with a rising sun, and it was the Heartland General Store. So if you were eating at the Heartland Cafe, you could get directed by this beautiful neon into the general store. And he may have done another one that was called Hot Grits. It was a neon that I had that was used in a dance performance at Mo Ming by Denny Babin, along with music from Al Green. And those of you who know about Al Green, he had hot grits poured on him or thrown at him. That neon ended up being sold, I think it was a remake of it, to the husband of somebody who was in that performance. But needless to say, I like neon signs. I've always liked driving around late at night at Chicago back in the day and seeing neon signs for candy stores or bars or whatever. And Jacob's been doing neon for a long time up at Lightwriters Neon Workshop in Northbrook. How about telling us a little bit about your work, how you got into neon and what you've done, whether it's commercial or artwork. And then we'll talk about a great new project that you and your daughter, Zoelle Nagib, have going on right now.
All right. Well, I first got into it really because of the love of light and color and a little bit of glass. I was a photographer beforehand and just loved the look of them. And one of the first things I did was driving around at night with my camera, photographing neon around Chicago, just because it turned me on so much. And plus, I knew that it wasn't always going to be there. More I looked at it, it sort of put a hook into me, and I wanted to make this stuff. And I had no clue whatsoever, whether you do it under hot water or what you do. So I went out and searched around Chicago and walked in the back door of Flash Trick, was out down on Western Avenue at the time. And I watched the glassblowers working on neon signs, and I just fell in love with it. Went home, tried it with propane torches, failed miserably, and then started to look around for places where I could learn. And it was kind of difficult in Chicago to learn because the neon shops were governed by the electrical union, and they wanted you to be an apprentice, which you had to be in the age group of 18 to 26, and I was 27 at the time. So they told me I was too old to learn the trade. So I searched around. Yeah, I was living in Evanston at the time, and I finally found a place all the way down in 83rd Street, 83rd and Western, that was willing to teach me something if I was willing to sort of apprentice in the shop and take over in the shop if I learned. And I did, and I spent several years there. And the gentleman that taught me was just a wizard at this. And he retired, and I hung on for about a year and ended up having a little dispute with the new owners of the shop and walked and started my own shop. And that's my basic history. Made a lot of neons all over Chicago for major restaurants, all kinds of places, and branched off. And having a background in photography, I did a lot of film props. I think we probably did close to 60 feature film shot in Chicago, and theaters and things like that. And I started teaching too at my studio. Mostly it was small groups, and that was a lot of fun because the excitement of the students really fed into what I was doing. And I enjoyed that. And that's sort of what we're trying to keep up today, because there are very few places where you can learn the art and science of neon sign making or neon art making.
Well, Jacob, before we go to your new project with your daughter, uh, give our listeners and our viewers a little bit about what is the procedure for doing neon? You mentioned glass blowers. Um, how does it work? Give us a little
Oh, it's you have to have a sealed vessel, something to hold the neon in. The neon comes right out of the air. It's a basic element. It's like the light you see in lighting, but you have to make a vessel to keep it in. And it has to be glass. You cannot make plastic neon. It just doesn't work. So half of it is the art of glass blowing, where you take pre-made tubes. Some people even pull their own tubing, which is nice because it gives you, all kinds of custom possibilities in color and texture. But you work this tubing over a fire, different types of fires, different types of appliances, into shapes that you want to have. And then when you're finished, you seal it off with electrodes and you process it. You pull a vacuum on it, and then you move these inert gases back in. And we use all kinds of things. We can use helium, neon, argon, xenon, krypton, which makes me weak, of course. But yeah, that's all part of the process. And it's great when things light, and it's okay when they don't light. Sometimes the glass blowing is enough. There's really a fascination I have in taking this material that's normally hard. You don't just flop it around. You get it to a certain temperature and it starts moving, and you can get very nebulous with it. Just you and the fire and the glass, and it's just really a wonderful experience.
Let me just ask before we go to Zoe, are there many other neon artists or even commercial neon people around these days?
Well, it's interesting. It's taken a switch. It's kind of fallen out of popularity in the sign shop, in the sign industry, where LEDs have taken over. But an interesting thing has happened, sort of like photography, in that the fine art is still there, and there's a large rise in neon artists, people working with it for art's sake, mostly on the first two coasts. But you're seeing more and more of it in art museums and things like that. So it's good. It's taken the shift from the commercial to the art world, which I love it, because I started basically to make artwork, and the public, I don't know if they were ready. It seemed like there was a basic equation: neon equals signs. So people came and knocked on the door and said, "Hey, make me a sign," and we did.
Well, Zoelle, young people sometimes rebel against their parents, and sometimes they adopt certain things. Most of the time, whether they know it or not, they're learning a lot. How did you get into doing neon? When and how?
Yeah, I also rebelled for a good 30 years. I of course grew up around it, and I started putting glass into fire when I was really young. My parents gave me my own torch when I was 10 years old, and I started bead making. And I did flame working, so lots of solid glass sculpture over a torch, well into my teens. And then when I chose to go to college, I studied photography instead, also kind of following in footsteps, because my dad, his initial interests were in photography, and that's what got him into light art. But I studied photography. I graduated and worked various jobs, had kids. And then right before the pandemic, I started having ideas for artwork in neon, and had those first couple ideas fabricated by my dad, because we were all really busy. And then when COVID came, we were kind of just bored a little bit.
Now what do we do?
Thankfully,
we have to stay home.
Yeah, we were lucky enough to be bored. And I showed up here one day and just said, all right, I'm ready to make my own. I had lots of ideas. And luckily I had had a good amount of glass experience in my younger years, so jumping back into it wasn't too much of a shock. But there's a lot to learn. There's a pretty steep learning curve, and yeah, I just sort of started and didn't think I was gonna really want to get that into it. But the more and more I did it, the more and more I thought, hey, I could do this every day for the next who knows how long. So that's
So
where
you're doing it every day now.
yeah, it's my only job now.
And for a number of years, Jacob, you had your Lightwriters Neon Workshop, and you worked alone, probably had guests. I remember coming to your studio once upon a time, and I'm going to go looking for those old 35 millimeter photos. Um, but so when Zoelle, when you got involved, the space is too small. You only got 800 square feet up there, I think. So what's your plan? You guys are going to open a new studio. You're going to do it together?
Yeah, so we are planning to open a new studio somewhere on the north side of Chicago. It's gonna be roughly 2,000 square feet, possibly larger. I think we're gonna have room to set up about 6 or 7 benches, so stations for people to work at. And our main focus will be teaching classes. So folks from the public can sign up for a basic Neon 101 class all the way through, master class lessons with a master craftsman. And
Yeah, your dad?
yeah, that'll be my dad. And we'll have guest artists. We'll have, one-off little taster courses for people to come in and just give it a try. And we're really excited, alongside, of course, the fabrication and artwork of our own that we're already making, have space to do that. But we're very excited, as my dad said, watching people learn for the first time and find that connection between the material and your sort of power over the material is really fascinating and really fun to watch. So I'm really excited for that.
What are some of the pieces you've created? Are they abstract? Are they do they mirror reality? Talk a little bit about some of the pieces you've created.
Yeah, so I'm pretty split half between word-based art. So art that is very referential to neon signage, has words like you would see in any shop window, but typically with the message turned on its head, either a sort of evolution of a message or the reversal of a message. And then some of my more abstract art has to do a lot with just the glass material itself, with colored glass. I use a lot of hand pulled tubing. Like my dad mentioned, people go into a hot glass studio where they do traditional glass blowing, like making vessels and cups and bowls, and they pull custom color tubing. So I've used quite a bit of that in my work, because the material is just so interesting to me. And having grown up around glass, it's just so beautiful that I can't stop myself.
You ever been cut by the glass? Either of you?
Oh yeah.
Working? Is it an occupational hazard in the neon world?
Yeah, I mean, we get like little cuts on our fingers, and then we sort of realize it's sticky or there's little red prints on things, and we're like, oh. But I've never cut myself badly.
Well, this is a big endeavor. You're going to open a new place. It's going to be much larger than the setup you have up in Northbrook, and so you got to look for a place. You've got to fill it up with all the equipment that you need. This is going to take some dough, and I know you're raising some money, and I'm not sure how much advocating we can do, but I think it's okay to tell us about your Kickstarter and how people can find out more about your project.
Yeah, we have a Kickstarter running right now. It's got about a month left to it. And there's some really great rewards. Different levels of funding will get you stickers or a t-shirt or even a private lesson. So if you just Google Lightwriters Neon Kickstarter or follow the link that we've provided in the show notes, you can find us or follow us on Instagram or join our mailing list also at lightwriters.com. You can find that. Follow us for updates. But yeah, the Kickstarter is going right now to help push us into that comfortable zone to start setting up.
Let me hit you both up on what inspires you to do various pieces. Do you just laying in bed and you think of an idea? Is it something you see? Is it look when I'm doing, I look at photography books and say, oh, I got a picture that looks kind of like that. I mean, what goes on in your creative process? Jacob, you take it first.
Well, a lot of my work actually comes from songs, listening to music and listening to some of the song lyrics. I'll hear something that sparks an interest. And let me take a step back for a second. I listen to music a lot when I'm going to sleep. So I transition into this dream state and start.
Rolling Stones before bed?
Not really Rolling Stones so much. That's usually the wake-up music.
Yeah.
But I start, getting visuals that go along with it. And I start seeing things, like I heard a song that talked about a black rabbit. And I started imagining a neon made out of black light of a rabbit. And I was also thinking, well, black rabbit, white rabbit, and then I started thinking of, these heredity charts that they would make, black rabbit, white rabbit, and then you get 2 blacks and 2 whites, and, how it goes out like that. And I have not made the black rabbit in neon as of yet. It's on the long list of things. I recently made a neon robot, which was kind of fun.
Actually, tell us about the neon robot.
He was just cute. I was just goofing around one day and made a robot. I don't know what even prompted that.
Does the robot move and do things?
No, he stands there. He
looks like a robot.
He holds a little globe in each hand to say that he's got a grip on both worlds. And it was a fun one. It was cute, wiggly mouth and square eyes, and it was very much of a kid's drawing, almost like kind of what's behind me. I've been accused sometimes of making things that look like kid drawings, and some people say, "Hey, that's great." That's just a certain type of art. Some of the other things I was playing with was the early bird. The idea of the bird pulling the worm out of the ground, and just having a sign that said early birds. Does it mean anything? No, not really. It's my work tends to look like store signs, but they're not. It's sort of a play on that. I had one, I sold it recently. It said musical chairs. Well, it's a game.
That was one of my favorite games at family gatherings.
I know. So I made a sign, as if somebody would be selling musical chairs. But that's
Zoelle. Let me flip over to you. And what is your creative process, or example of one or two?
Yeah, I mean, mine is not quite as lighthearted, unfortunately. Sometimes they're pretty painful subjects. One of the pieces I have actually on display right now at Ken Saunders Gallery down on Carroll Street is an evolution of the quote, "There's nothing new under the sun," which is a biblical quote from Ecclesiastes. And then it was taken by Octavia Butler, who said, there's nothing new under the sun, but we are in a time of new suns. And or there are new suns. And then Adrienne Marie Brown said, we are in a time of new suns. And so my neon says a light under new suns, which is a light meaning either to take off and to land, to find yourself in a new place, or to literally be lit from within, which is what neon is. So that's sort of how I think I take, things I read or things I hear, and sort of process the words in a way that makes sense to me, and then come out with my own way of saying it. So
Zoelle, you mentioned that you've had kids,
I
and
do.
I'm wondering if the kids are learning the art of the neon.
Yeah, my oldest is 9, and she's made a couple beads, and she tried bending some neon tubing pretty recently, and she really liked it. So I want to get them back into it. They both also at Halloween, they drew me some really simple skulls, and I made those both in neon and hung them in our front window at our house. So the trick-or-treaters could see some kiddo drawn neon. It was really fun.
Well, let me ask either of you take this one. What would you suggest people do if they're interested in neon? How they learn that, and you could pump up your new project, your new studio, but also uh, maybe the status of neon in the world, or some great neon that has been created that people can learn about. What do you got?
You want to take this?
Well, there is a lot of neon, and you see more and more in museums. You know, you go to the Art Institute of Chicago, you may see a neon.
Or two?
There's a show opening this week at the Wrightwood Gallery that's from a 60s neon artist, Chrissa. And it's there are a lot of resources for people that want to research it. I mean, it's all over the internet now. Of course, when I started, there wasn't any internet. So we try to post things whenever we can, Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and all those things. And there's a lot of other people that do that as well.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Yeah, if people are interested in learning, of course, signing up for our newsletter and hearing about the classes we teach will be your first route to getting hands-on experience. But there's also some great resources online. One of them is the Neon Makers Guild, and they're a membership-based organization, but have a tremendous resource to experts all over the country and membership all over the world. So that's a really good resource for people to follow. And I'd like to add about the shift from commercial application to artistic application is that not only is most neon you see now in an artistic realm, but more and more people are making their own neon. It's less going to a fabricator and saying, here's my picture, please make this for me so I can put it in a gallery. It's students coming to a neon fabricator and putting their hands to material and working it in their own way. And that's a really important distinction, I think, that we make sometimes when we talk about neon art.
Well, Zoelle Nagib and Jacob Fishman, I want to thank you for coming on, and I'm going to ask you one more time to give the information how, if people want to get involved with the Kickstarter program plan with you guys, give it to us now.
Yeah, go to Kickstarter and search Lightwriters Neon Chicago. Those search should work. Yeah.
Light it up, everybody. Shine on. And thank you so much for coming on live from the Heartland.
Thank you, Michael.
I'm going to come see you sooner or later, and I'm going to dig out those photographs. I think the photographs I have of you is when there was a big cactus behind you, a neon cactus.
It's very possible. I remember you took pictures of me and Greg together.
Yeah. Well, I'll send them to you as soon as I figure out what year it was and where the negative is and if it's scanned or not.
Late 70s, early 80s. Thank you.